Hello and welcome back to Series 1, Episode 9 of Quat Pod, a dirty old town and the rise of FC United of Manchester. I'm really looking forward to this one. It's all part of understanding a little bit more about trust-owned clubs. Once you've listened to this, please like, share on Twitter and on Quat Pod within YouTube. We've got a great guest here. It's a guy called George Baker, who was a director of FC United of Manchester and is now kindly come in and going to give a little bit of a discussion related to how they rose. But before we hear from him, please don't forget Evening with Brian McDermott on the 24th of March on the Friday. Tickets available from World Wide Web, ticketsource.co.uk. Please search up Brian or An Evening with Brian, it will appear. Thanks also to Kevin Miller for coming on and doing a great podcast. We could talk to him for hours, and we did. We spoke to him for an hour and 10 minutes. That's a mega one. This one is slightly shorter. Since we last spoke, all I'm going to say is Burton away. I went Shrewsbury at home. I took the good lady wife out for Valentine's Day and then watched the remainder on iFollow. And then Port Vale away didn't quite make it, partly because I'm not match fit. Anyway, without further ado, I'll give you George, FC United of Manchester. And it's great to hear about the way they structure themselves and their social values. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome back to Quat Pod. I know I normally do a huge introduction on people in terms of their background, but I'm going to let this guest do their talking. What I will say is I'll give you a clue about the club. It's a really interesting football club. It's a fans-owned club. It was founded in 2005. If I've got this wrong, I'm sure I will be corrected. Presently play at Broadhurst Park, and as a direct result of the Glazer takeover of Manchester United, FC United were formed. And I have with me today George Baker, who is used to be on the board of directors. How are you? You're right, George.
Welcome. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on.
So, history. We are aligned football clubs, Exeter City, and I've just recently interviewed AFC Wimbledon, a guy called Kevin Rye, which is really interesting. Give us a little bit of history about where the club really started. I believe it was proposed in Red Issue Fanzine in Feb 2005, and that there was a meeting at the pretty cool place of the Manchester Apollo Theatre on the 30th of May 2005. What was that all about? Could you explain a little bit of background?
Well, the idea for FC United, as you say, was mooted in Red Issue, a very popular Manchester United fanzine, sadly out of print now, but a very quite a radical and effective one that was very much the voice of a lot of fans of Manchester United. And the idea was, if the Glazers did buy Manchester United, we'd set up a protest club with the working title of FC United. It set out like the basics of, that it'd be a fan-owned club, that we'd never have a shirt sponsor, and those 18 years later, those two core principles are still very much intact. The idea was mooted in the fanzine. A few months later, the Glazers did indeed get a majority shareholding of Manchester United. So we had to back that up with action. Essentially, everybody who had read the article, who was supportive of the idea, went into action. Really, there was a website set up. We had over £26,000 of donations within 24 hours.
Really?
I believe. So it was a project that had a lot of enthusiasm straight away, and it was May 2005 when the Glazers did purchase Manchester United. and a series of meetings, including the one at the Apollo that you mentioned. There was a couple at the Methodist Hall in Manchester on Oldham Street as well, where quite a few hundred United fans gathered to discuss the idea of this. Like the Independent Man United Supporters Association had hosted meetings there in the past, and a lot of the people involved in that organisation then became involved with FC United, stopped buying season tickets at Old Trafford, stopped buying membership, stopped going altogether. As a response to what we thought was an abomination of a takeover, and essentially the final straw in many ways. There was a lot of Manchester United fans, myself included, who'd kind of had enough with the experience of football in the top flight. Obviously, the success of Manchester United, as wonderful as it came at a price for the match-going fan, and the local match-going fan at that. Obviously ticket prices going up, atmosphere in the stadium depleted, difficulty even getting tickets for home games due to the amount of people who'd suddenly become Manchester United fans in the preceding 10, 15 years due to the success. Overzealous stewarding, overzealous policing. Anyone who watches football at the top flight will know what I mean, really. It was just a culmination of those kind of things. And then the takeover was the final straw, if you like, because we realised we'd never have any kind of say in how Manchester United would be run. Even when it was a PLC, excuse me, even when it was a PLC and we had the option of buying shares in the club, at least there was a possibility that there'd be fan representation if organisations like Shareholders United got a large stake in the ownership of the club. But all of that was wiped when the Glazers purchased enough shares to forcibly purchase the rest.
Right. Okay. And I'm going to be a little bit ignorant, and I don't mean to offend. Right? Was that literally a real turning point where people were like, "No, we're not going to watch Manchester United anymore. We are literally going to form this club"? Do people still go back and watch, or not really, or some do? How does it work?
It's a broad church in many ways, in the sense that not everybody is 100% boycotting Manchester United, and goes to FC solely. That's what I do personally, and I know plenty of people who do that, like solely FC United. But it became, as momentum for FC United snowballed from 2005. We garnered a lot of interest in our first few years due to the success of the club that nobody really expected. A lot of people wrote us off as being, there was a consensus back in the 90s and 2000s that every single Manchester United fan is a clueless glory hunter who knows nothing about football. Yeah. And we proved a lot of people wrong when we set up our own club and ran it ourselves and went and got 3 promotions in 3 years straight away. It garnered a lot.
Sorry, Karen.
I garnered a lot of interest straight away. And so a lot of United fans came along just to see what it was about. A lot of United fans who couldn't give up the season tickets for whatever reasons, which is fair enough. There's if you support a club all your life, and it's very, very difficult to stop going. So that's why there was only a few thousand of us. So a lot of United fans see FC United as a second team, if you like. A lot of football fans have that, don't they? Like particularly fans at top level. They go watch their local non-league team, or they go watch a team that their friend watches or whatever. And we've garnered a lot of fans through that. A lot of United fans who wish us well and who come along now and again. There's fans of other clubs who come along to FC United, by other clubs, I mean not fans of Manchester United, just because they think what we're doing is a good thing, running football for ourselves, for the fans and for the local community. So it's a variety of people who come to FC United.
And can I just say that I've actually been to an FC United match. I've been to a couple. But I went when you were at Brackley Town, which is my local town where I live. And I was quite taken by the passion of the fans. And also, I'm going to get the song wrong now. Dirty Old Town, is that right?
Yeah, Dirty Old Town's the song that gets sung. The first verse of the actual song, and then followed by various verses that we've written to the same tune, mainly about building our own ground. So yeah, the atmosphere at FC United is great, and that's what one of the attractions of it is. I mean, it's improved at Old Trafford over the last few years, but certainly when we started out and the away following that we have, like the atmosphere is great. Like there's always noise coming from the away ends that we go to, and we get a lot of good feedback on that, and it's brilliant to be part of that.
And I'm quite intrigued. Like, and you talk about loosely. Oh yeah, we have a few meetings and independent, etc. And then you all came together. You had, I think it was 4 names that you had on the board. How did you make decisions at that point? You know, how did it all sort of come together in the early days?
Oh yeah, so we voted on 4 different names for the club. FC United of Manchester, AFC Manchester 1878 was another one.
Yeah.
Newton Heath United and I think Manchester Central was the other one. FC United of Manchester blew it out of the water. It got them a vast majority of the votes. And again, that was one of the first examples of the democracy of the club. Like people who turned up to the inaugural meeting voted on the name of the club, the badge of the club as well. There were 4 designs submitted, 3 or 4 designs submitted for a badge of the club. Again, the fans voted on that. So we chose the name, we chose the badge, the colours, red, white, and black. We didn't need to vote on that because it was always going to be that. So yeah, if right from the get-go, it was a democratic club, and it still is.
And I did a little bit of homework, and I've actually learned, and I've found it really good fun doing the research. I've learned a little bit about you. So your club ad is based on the City of Manchester coat of arms and features 3 ships that sails the 3 rivers. Sorry, a ship, should I say, that sails the 3 rivers flowing through Manchester, which is something I've now learned from this. And actually, it says that you're the 2nd largest fan-zone football club.
Yes, I believe Exeter are the largest.
I'm going to say that we are pretty equal, right? And you know, I need to look at the numbers at Exeter, but you had 4,000 people joined and pledged 100,000 into the bank account in the early days. Is that right?
Yeah. It was a lot of people who pledged. You know, I didn't have a season ticket, which was one of the reasons. And I knew I never would have at Manchester United due to the price. And I was 19 when FC United formed. So I just pledged the money that I would pay for a Manchester United membership. And there was lots of donations like that. People paid in what they would have normally paid for their United season ticket, or they paid in what a membership would have cost in my case, or just put in what they could. And again, that's something that continues to this day. Like we try and support the club by buying merchandise from the club, or even just submitting donations. We even have it's been running for well over 10 years now. We have a pay what you can afford season ticket scheme as well, where we have a recommended minimum, which is £150, I believe, at the moment. But it's essentially pay what you can afford. Like if you wanted a season ticket at FC United and you were unable to pay the recommended minimum, you can contact the club and say, look, this is my circumstance. Can I say pay this much for this year, or pay it in the installments? So we have that kind of initiative too. And the pay what you can afford is a really good initiative, because the £150 is what the cost of the season ticket is, and the rest of it potentially a donation on top of that, that the fans feel fit to give. So you know, we tend to get people donating 150 on top of the 150 they've paid, and it all goes straight into the club. And the donation bit isn't taxed either, so it goes straight, all of the money goes to the club.
Yeah, of course.
The donation part.
Do you know what? I'm seeing some real synergies, and I'm going to put a shout out to a guy that you don't know called Thomas White. And literally only a week ago, at Exeter, we've just launched a scheme, City for All, and we are now getting to the point where we're selling out a lot of games because of where we are in League One. But it's to give people that can't afford to go along the same lines as what you suggested. but that took us 20 years to come to. But I'm glad to see that you've done that. That's absolutely brilliant to hear. You're a nomadic club looking through, and I believe you played at. Well, there was a rejected merger of Lee RMI, and you've played at various other grounds. Just explain some of that background to us.
Yeah, so when we formed, obviously we had all those pledges of support, which got a lot of attention in the media. So it was quite obvious that we were going to be starting at Northwest Counties League level, which is level 10 of the pyramid. And we were going to have, in the region of 2,000 to 4,000 fans attending games based on the amount of people pledging support. So Lee RMI, who later became Lee Genesis, and who sadly have fallen way down. And I think they've folded a couple of times. They played way down the pyramid now. They came to us and offered a merger, which would see us take their place in what probably the Conference North equivalent now.
Right.
But we rejected that because we'd essentially then be taking over another club, wouldn't we? We wanted a club that existed for the people of Manchester, not for the people of Lee, essentially. There's a few fans we have from Lee, but at the same time, it's not Manchester. Even though it's within Greater Manchester, but it's a completely different town. So we wanted a club that was specifically for United fans in the area of Manchester. So the merger with Lee RMI was never really something that was considered seriously for very long, because we would essentially be doing a glazer on another club, which would defeat the object of the entire thing. So that was blown out the water quite quickly. The struggle to get a ground that was willing to hold these amount of people as well was a tricky one. We originally had an agreement with Droylsden, a non-league team in East Manchester.
Yeah, we've been there.
Yeah, they're on hiatus, I believe, at the moment. But the Tameside Council, who are the borough council for that area of Droylsden, vetoed it, even though we'd got the agreement in place, because they thought, 2,500 people every week in that area would be unsustainable, like due to traffic, parking, blah, 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 all the logistical issues. So that was kiboshed. And so we had a real struggle trying to find somewhere to actually host us. And so we had to settle with Gig Lane in Bury, which, again, as great a ground as that is, Bury is a town way outside, even though it's within Greater Manchester, it's way outside of Manchester. It's a good 10 miles north of the city. So there were a few people who were quite upset about that, but at the same time, it just wasn't logistical for a club starting from scratch with thousands of fans to be able to play in the smaller grounds in Manchester. So Gig Lane ended up actually being a very good option. It worked for Bury because we obviously paid rent to them. It worked for us because I think Gig Lane's capacity is around 11,000, and the biggest attendance we ever had there was in the region of 6,800 back in 2010 when we played Brighton in an FA Cup replay. So it was more than capable of hosting FC, even when we got a freakishly large attendance. And they only opened two stands of it as well. They only opened two stands of Gig Lane, which meant the atmosphere was much better. We got the fans behind the goal in the MRE and the fans in the main stand, all bartering with each other and creating an atmosphere. So Gig Lane has a lot of fond memories for a lot of FC United fans. And
6,731. I did in my little bit of notes. Looking at some of the grounds, to give you a bit of background, Exeter have played at Altrincham. We had a nightmare at Kirsten Ashton in the FA Cup, and then Radcliffe, Borough, Hyde United, Stalybridge, and Flixton.
Believe it or not, all those grounds you've just listed have been an FC United home ground at some point. That's how nomadic we've been. Like whether it be FA Trophy for Radcliffe, Flixton, I believe, was even used once as a home ground. Altrincham was for an FA Cup, FA Trophy match, I think. Stalybridge, we played there for half a season, and Curzon Ashton as well, we played there for half a season. So before we got our own ground in Moston back in 2015, we were quite a nomadic club, 9 years at Gig Lane, and then one season between Curzon Ashton and Stalybridge, and then finally our own ground. But cup matches had to be played at Radcliffe and Altrincham sometimes as well, because Gig Lane was too expensive for the lower cup ties.
Now, I'm really intrigued because talked to AFC Wimbledon about how they funded the new Plough Lane, and they talked about getting funding for it. Exeter are presently doing, or have just done some ground renewals, but that's been paid for by being clever with funding, shall we say, and a little bit of money from Ollie Watkins, who went to Aston Villa, and some of the money of that's gone into a new training ground. Now, looking at your new ground, it costs, am I right in saying it costs £6.3 million? Is that right?
It cost something in that region, yeah. Most of that money was raised through a community share scheme, where fans bought shares in the building of the ground, right. Which will essentially bought shares in the club, which would be paid back once the club was operating profitably. And that raised a good few million through that. There was a loan stock scheme as well for slightly wealthier FC United fans who were able to loan a bit more money and get a larger return back on any investment once the club becomes profitable, and also grants from various organisations, and a loan from Manchester City Council as well.
Yeah, no, it's really impressive. And perhaps something we should look at a little bit, because with our challenges at Exeter, like I said, I've alluded to, our ground is getting too small for us. Although a lot of us are very passionate about where the ground is, because it's right in the city. But as you've alluded to, related to the challenges you've had, that creates challenges on its own. But it's our home, so it's a little bit difficult. So. No, it's good to see what you've done there. Now, you do the living wage. You don't have a sponsor on the kit deliberately. You've now got, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 members. You've got some celebrity fans, haven't you? I think Eric Cantona is.
Eric Cantona's spoken favourably about us several times, which is great. I don't believe he's ever managed to get to a game. He'd be absolutely mobbed if he was. But he has spoken favourably of us in several interviews over the years, and not many United players have. There's a few here and there, and for the greatest one of all to be referencing us, it really does give you a buzz. That. And Steve Coppell, as you mentioned, he joined the club a few years back. He even came out to Detroit when we played a friendly against Detroit City, and was a co-commentator for us as well. So I briefly met him. He sent a telegram to my dad on his wedding. He was one of my dad's favourite United players, Steve
really?
Coppell. So it was quite cool to meet him. There's quite a few in that respect. We were even to this day we still get. Sadly, the confusion now is that people think that. Quite a few people, sadly, think that the class of '92 are celebrity fans, if you like, celebrity owners. People tend to confuse us with Salford City, which is enraging to say the least, because they are literally the antithesis in many ways of what we are trying to achieve. We're a fans club, not a millionaire club. So it's quite jarring when we get confused for Salford City. But we just have to gently remind people that we are the club that broke away from United, not try to forge links with them.
Yeah, indeed. And it's interesting you said in there, you talked about going to Detroit, and I think that is amazing in itself. Have you got other links with other fans clubs that you've played? I know that we've played a friendly because you guys came down to us. I was at the game. I think we're overdue a friendly to come to you.
That'd be great, honestly. Like a professional club, a professional fan-owned club. That's exactly Exeter, I would say, are exactly the kind of club we'd love to be playing in pre-season. We've got links with AFC Wimbledon as well. They helped us out a lot during our formation because obviously very different but very similar stories with regards to how the club formed. And the organisation of the clubs as well, both fan-owned and starting right at the bottom of the pyramid. So we played a lot of friendlies against AFC Wimbledon in our early years. We're still yet to go to the new Plough Lane. I hope we can get to do that eventually. We've also got links with pretty much any fan-owned club, particularly ones that break away from their original and start at the bottom, such as Bury AFC are a great example of that, obviously. The original Bury FC, which still exists in a way without a team, but Bury AFC, who formed in order to provide football for Bury fans and formed with a fan-owned philosophy as well. Obviously, we were one of the first people they came to based on the links that we'd forged since 2005, obviously ground sharing at Gig Lane. So we were more than happy to help out. The board at the time were more than happy to help them out and get them started. Clapton CFC in London as well. They've played a friendly against us a couple of years ago. They're another club.
Say again, Clapton.
Clapton CFC, yeah, Clapton Community Football Club. They broke from Clapton FC because Clapton FC were a club that a lot of people started following 15, 20 years or so ago. They got quite a large ethical following in the lower leagues in London, but they had no say in the running of the club, and for some reason the ownership tried putting ticket prices up, tried forcing out a lot of the core support for whatever reason. So they decided to form their own Clapton Community FC, and they managed to raise hundreds of thousands by having their first ever away shirt being based on the International Brigades flag from the Spanish Civil War, and they raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for themselves and for they even managed to get Clapton FC's original ground back, the Old Spotted Dog, which is the oldest in London. So that's just a testament to the power of fan ownership in football. Within a few years, the breakaway club got the keys to the original ground of the club they broke away from. So that's what can be achieved.
Oh yeah, and between us, what can be achieved, and it depends on your position. And I think we're just on a similar journey because yes, we're doing really well at the moment and had promotions and stuff. It's been a hard slog, and I'm not going to say anything about the non-league days in terms of they were really happy times for us. Actually, looking back, going to Lee RMI, and there was 350 extra fans went up there for a game at the time. It was really eye-opening going to Stanford in the cup, and it was putting the soul back into what we were doing, and and I'm glad, it's great to see you guys are doing that. Now, I've noticed it's not all been plain sailing. You've had a relegation recently. How's the season going? I believe you're playing Lancaster tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah, Lancaster away tomorrow. I'm on the 9:50 train in the morning, so that'll be a mess day. Really looking forward to that because Lancaster's a great city to day drink in. So Lancaster away. We're eight. I believe we're eighth in the table at the moment. Managed to get a 97th minute winner on Tuesday night against Guiseley, despite being under the cosh the whole game. So it was that's pleasant when you're on the receiving end of that sort of thing. A result you don't necessarily deserve, but that's football and all that. So yeah, we're doing okay. We've just sold our best player, Regan Linney, to Altrincham. So who are 2 levels above us in the National League. So he's now a full-time pro, and that's something that we've managed to do quite often. Pave the way for a lot of footballers to go higher up the leagues and sign pro contracts. It's not something we want to stop players doing. Regan Linney did score way over 50% of our goals this season, so it'll be a job replacing him. But it's happened before where we've lost our best player. We had a striker called Tunde Owolabi, who's now one of the League of Ireland's most in-demand strikers. He was terrific for us in the 2019-20 season. We've had quite a few players who've gone into the professional ranks. Ollie Banks went to Chesterfield, George Thompson to Harrogate Town, Kieran Glynn went to Salford. There's quite a few. So we're proud to pave the way for a lot of players. And obviously the academy that we've got has resulted in promoting a lot of players to the first team and giving them a run out in front of a club that plays in front of a large crowd.
When you say academy, is that their Moston Juniors FC?
Well, Moston Juniors are the junior teams that we're affiliated to, because they already existed in Moston and played on the fields where we built the ground. So we thought instead of forming our own junior teams to compete with them, we'll get them involved and let them use our facilities. And once they reach, adult age, they can hopefully, if they're good enough, can come into FC United's youth team. And so, we've got a good link with Moston Juniors. Bit of a fractious relationship at times. Obviously, it's two different football clubs trying to work together. But they are essentially the junior teams of FC United because they use our facilities and they're in the same area.
And in terms of players, right, and I want to chuck this one out there. So at the start, 900 players applied, 200 were chosen for trial, and the nephew.
I was one of them.
Are you one of them? Yeah,
I was one of the 200. Yeah, unbelievably.
I thought you were going to say 900 then. 200, you did quite well. In the
900 people applied and 200 got asked to play. I played in goal. It was okay, but I was nowhere near good enough to get offered a place in the team. But it was. They had the trials down in Levenshulme on the university football pitches. I'm not sure they're there anymore. But I remember that day. It was quite an eye opener. I think about 20 odd got invited to a training session, and I think one made it through to the first team. So it was more of a PR exercise more than anything. Get the news cameras down to see the players trying out for the club, and obviously we'd appointed a manager by then, Carl Marginson, who went on to be our manager for 12 and a half years. He was there. The players.
And one of them was the great nephew of a Man United player I saw. The first signing, is that right?
Is that Jos Mitten?
Yeah.
Yeah, you great nephew of Charlie Mitten, I believe. Yeah. His brother Andy is the editor of United We Stand, which is the most popular existing Manchester United fanzine as well. So it's quite a strong United connection there when we signed Jos Mitten. And there's quite an iconic picture of us because we had our first game at the RMI, as you mentioned. First ever game. There's quite an iconic picture of Jos being hoisted up on the shoulders of FC United fans who invaded the pitch after the game, after a 0-0 draw. Quite a few went on the pitch in celebration, and there's quite a plethora of iconic photographs from that day, including Jos Mitten himself. Yeah,
it's funny how you can celebrate 0-0s because one of Exeter City's abiding memories is getting a 0-0 at Old Trafford in the FA Cup, Man United.
Of course,
And there were people that day celebrating for similar reasons because we realised that we had the money to keep the club going and that we weren't going to go bust. So as a fans-run club, when you need to find £4.8 million, sometimes the pockets aren't that deep. So, I can understand that. General mood of the club then at the moment? Good.
One of optimism at the moment. We've had... we've had good years, we've had bad years. There is an air of professionalism at the club at the moment, though. We recruited a new CEO recently, Natalie Atkinson, who's done a great job in recruitment and bringing in sponsorship and things like that. Just kind of steadying the club, making it a more professional outfit. It's difficult for us to attract sponsors, although as much as they're needed. In order for us to remain competitive, we're very adamant that we won't have a shirt sponsor, and as a result of that, it's a struggle to attract a main sponsor. So obviously the visibility of said sponsor decreases massively. But if we were to ever have a shirt sponsor, it's not out of the question. It would be put to a fan's vote. That's the beauty of FC United and the beauty of fan ownership. You put that if there are enough people at the club who believe that we should have a shirt sponsor, a resolution will be put to the fans at one of the general meetings. We have 2 a year. And if it passes by a 2/3 majority, then we'll have a shirt sponsor. I very much doubt it would pass because a lot of our fans are quite rightly proud of the fact that we don't carry corporate logos emblazoned on the front of the shirt. But it's not out of the question that it could happen. And as long as it's done within a democratic process, then so be it one day if that does happen.
I'm generally curious about voting. How do you do it? Do you do electronic voting and stuff?
We're moving towards that. We really do. We really should get an online voting system going because it is still either you vote by turning up at the meeting on the day or you post them to us. And posting it is quite a complicated process. There's all sorts of sheets you've got to print out. You've then got to put them in an envelope within an envelope that you then send to the club so that it doesn't so that it's not visible as to who which member has voted which way and stuff to the people counting. So all about the discretion and things like that. So it is a bit of a complex process. It's a lot simpler if you just go to the meeting on the day as a member of the club. You can just tick off a sheet, put it in the box.
Yeah.
If you've got to post it, it's a bit complex. So we are moving towards an online system, and it really should. It will get more people voting, more people engaging with the democratic process of the club, because it is quite a low 3-digit number of the amount of people who do actually vote in these things.
Really?
So it's up to you as a member to engage with the democracy of the club. Essentially, it's not a system whereby every member has to vote. It's up to you if you want to vote on these issues as a member. And I'd encourage any FC United fan who is a member to cast your vote, because that's having that power is something that after 18 years, I think some of our members are taking for granted a little bit. The politics of the club isn't something that everybody's interested in, which is baffling to me, because the whole point of FC United is to get involved, to be running the club, to be an active member in order to steer the direction, because that's what we're supposed to be doing as fans who created a club in the image of what we want Manchester United to be. So for me, it's out of the question. You always vote for either whoever's standing for the board, whatever resolutions are put forward for or against. Members' votes, which aren't binding, but if they get a majority, it's advised that the board follow them. So it's vital that we all get involved. And I think online voting, which we are. I'm seeing steps that we are moving towards that. It will get a lot more fans engaged with that process if we get it sorted soon.
It does. And actually, this is one of the motivations for me and the team doing the podcast with other clubs, to actually yardstick. And it's not to puff our chests out and go, look how good we are, right? And because there are things that we're not so good at. And there's things that, like everybody, we can all do better. And I'm one of those relentless people around our club, and I pushed for electronic voting probably 4 or 5 years ago, which we've now got. And when you talk about low digits, you will see a real uplift on that, because we get probably up to 1,000 people voting at a time. And probably one of the things that we're not very good at is putting more things out to vote, shall we say. So it tends to be just at election time and stuff. But, for example, we had a vote of should we move from our present football ground. And it was quite interesting to see the result, I think. Sorry, I should put a bit of backstory on that, because Exeter Chiefs had a stadium, and they've got a lovely stadium. And I think 92% of us voted to stay where we were. So for the same reasons as you. So I would encourage you guys to do that. If I can help put you in touch with anybody, if you need any help, then please do so.
I'll remember that, certainly. Yeah, that would be great. It's funny you touch on that, because it's not a utopia by any means, fan ownership. There's a lot of there's a lot of heated debate. There's a lot of conflict. There's it's not this it's not this perfect way of doing things that we initially thought it was. It's certainly the preferable option. I'd encourage anyone to go to any football club, no matter what level they're at, to go fan owned. But it's not easy. Certainly not if you get involved fully with it. So it's just important to remember that it doesn't solve every problem being fan owned.
Yeah, you're right. And sometimes when people put stuff forward, it can put people's noses out of joint occasionally, and it's like, and sometimes people lose sight that we all support our football club, and ultimately, you want what's best for your club, don't you? And it's great to see what you guys have done, and that's really why I wanted to get you on the show. I'm going to set a challenge on this podcast to Exeter City to organise a friendly with you guys. I think that will be a nice thing from a collaboration point of view to try and get up. We don't do a lot of home friendlies, just to share. We tend to go down to Cornwall, partly because we've been doing a lot of renovations to our pitch. So let's see what I'll put it up at the next trust meeting that I attend and put that out there as an idea.
we owe you a friendly at ours based on the fact that we came down to Exeter those years ago, and I'm sure you'd be able to bring up a few hundred for that, and that would be terrific because we don't play a lot of teams in the football league pre-season. Sometimes happens, but they often send like we played a friendly against Bolton recently, but they sent their kids, and it wasn't really a test. So I think it would be certainly one of the things we often, as I touched on earlier, we always like to support a lot of the clubs that form as breakaway clubs and go up the leagues. But when we often play them in friendlies when they first start out, when they've just got their first few squads together. And it's not exactly as happy as we are to do that. It's not exactly a great test for the players pre-season. So it'd be great to get a like-minded club like yourselves who will be a test for our players, if you like. So yeah, I'm all for that. That'd be great if it could happen.
Look, let's make that so. I'm conscious of time because I'm not being rude to you because I know you're on the clock and you. So that sounded wrong on many levels. I know that you need to go off and do some stuff. I personally want to say thank you for coming on. When I initially spoke to you, I knew that it was a similar story, a similar path, similar values, and we wish you all the very best. And if we can support you, we will. You did give us some nightmare grounds that you played at because they are places which don't live well in the Exeter City psyche, shall we say. Some of the places we've lost around where you've played. But look, we'd love to come up. Thanks for coming on the show. Yeah, it was a really interesting one. I enjoyed this one. Thank you for your time.
No problem, Al. Thanks very much for having me on. Cheers.
Well, close of the show time. Thanks to George. I really did enjoy talking to him. You can see the progress that FC United are making. A proper quality football club. And if you ever go to a game, you need to hear their version of Dirty Old Town by the Pogues. I think it's a great tune and anthem. And I managed to witness it once at a game, and I've got to be honest, I found it quite moving hearing them, bearing in mind how much they've done and the politics and the nomadic existence until they got their ground. And it's great to see that they still hold their values about no sponsorship on the shirts, or that may change. But again, a fascinating point to see how far they've come. It's also good to see what they've done in terms of relationships with other football clubs, and there's definitely a great opportunity there to Exeter to repay the opportunity to go up and play them for a friendly. So I'm going to see whether we can make that happen. So next up is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be a player. It's going to be a bit of a fan show. A couple of proper die-hard Exeter fans coming on. You've got Exmouth Nick and Chris Bumble. They will be entertaining, and we'll probably need a little bit of management. But looking forward to having them come on the show. It's a beautiful game. It's about time we start getting some points. A slightly worrying time. But let's keep it going. Football's got a habit of surprising you. Enjoy.